everybody, my name is Neil Staff and I'm the tax partner at Raffingers, and I'm just going to give a very short tax tip today about research and development and how it applies to limited companies. Rest assured, I'm not going to go into an awful lot of detail. I'm only going to talk to you for about 5 minutes. So if you can hang on for 5 minutes and it interests you all the way through, you can always contact me by email, or hopefully there'll be a telephone number put up and I'd be more than happy to talk about R&D with you. So R&D, basically, what is it? A lot of people now have heard about research and development. It's basically a relief that's available to limited companies only. So if you're doing R&D and you're self-employed or you're in a partnership, it's not going to apply to you. It's a limited company relief and it's in the statute books. So just to be clear, it's not some sort of tax planning like Gary Barlow or sort of icebreaker schemes and things. Governments actually want people to undertake R&D, and they're quite prepared to put the tax relief where their mouth is and get people to save tax to do it. I'm going to split the talk very quickly into the sort of expenses that qualify, but I think more importantly to talk really what R&D is itself. Now, the definition of R&D is both helpful and unhelpful because it talks about achieving a resolution in the field of science and technology. And that in itself makes sense, but it's very hard to apply that, isn't it, when looking at what you might be doing in your own company. So just maybe a couple of quick examples just to think whether this could apply to you. I must be honest, when I speak to clients, I generally refer to it as the scratching of the head moment. And what I mean by that is that perhaps someone's come into your business and say, I want you to make this, or I want you to design this, or I want you to come and build this for me. And you think, okay, I can do that. But you think, how am I going to do that? That's unusual. For a builder, it might be a listed building, or you're working under the sort of water table or something like that. Or it's say a listed building and you need to protect the materials. And it's not that you can't do it, but you might have to find a slightly different way of doing something. It's not the standard building protocols. It's the sort of scratching of the head moment, thinking we can do this, but we have to think a little bit further. So that can apply to an awful lot of companies. Sometimes it's really obvious. Sometimes you might be redesigning some management systems, or designing an app within your business, and you think, do you know what, I'm designing something here where the information isn't readily available on the internet, and we're having to sort of go away and design something that's new and bespoke and original, and in which case you think R&D could well apply, and you could well be right. Other people think R&D just applies to certain businesses. For example, pharmaceutical companies developing the cure for the cold or cancer, and whilst that in itself may be R&D, it doesn't have to be that bespoke. You're not having to benefit mankind by sort of designing something that helps literally everyone. You can design something that just helps you. It just has to be pretty original, pretty bespoke, and the information that you're using to sort of base the work that you're doing on has to be not readily available. So broadly, sort of, if you can't find it after a 2-hour search on the internet and it's not there, then that could basically be potentially R&D. The costs, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but just to say it isn't the same rules as to what's allowable for tax purposes. I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you're a company director or one of the tech guys in a company, and the rules you probably know it has to be allowable for the purpose of your business. With R&D, it's not that widely drawn. The expenses that you can claim are broadly 3 types. If you have staffing costs, including the director's salary, not dividends, you can look at the people that do R&D within the company and attach part of their salary, their employer's national insurance, their paid pension contributions, and work out a reasonable percentage of the time that they spend on R&D. That can be a cost. In addition to that, you might have an R&D subcontractor, which is someone that you go to. It can be a company or an individual, and you say, I'm trying to build this widget. I can do this much, but I need you to do this part for me, or I need you to research this part for me. Payments to that R&D subcontractor can be allowable for tax purposes. And the last thing, generally speaking, is something called a consumable material. This generally applies to sort of manufacturing businesses So for example, I'm pulling out a random example of a company I dealt with several years ago that actually designed and manufactured glue. And what they did, they had to keep going into the storeroom to pull the materials out, to mix it together, to see what worked and what didn't work. And at the end, you obviously had a lot of sort of very old glue or sludge that had to be thrown away. Those materials were consumed in the purpose. So the cost of the materials would already be in the accounts as cost of sales, but you can claim those costs again because they were used in the R&D process. There are a few other costs, but broadly speaking, that's it. It's quite a complex subject, and I'm going to pretty much wrap up the call now. Rather than by talking for 5-10 minutes and boring you, I'd like to keep your interest if I can, and just say, if you are a limited company and you think you're carrying out R&D, it's always worth speaking to a company or specialist that deals with R&D just to find out if you think you qualify. Personally, I would be happy to speak to anyone who gets in touch. I get a lot of calls. Maybe I only sort of end up submitting claims for 1 of 10 people that I speak to, but I'm happy to speak to those 10 people just to find the one, if that makes sense. So hopefully my details are going to be displayed at the end of this. Please do get in touch. Wouldn't charge you a penny. Love to talk to you for half an hour or even longer just to see if you qualify. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that's been interesting and not too much in detail. Please get in touch if you have any queries, and I'll leave it there. Thanks a lot.